me. I was just a trainee. And we got this one account, and one loan rep left and went to another mortgage company and called us up and said, hey, you want to do our appraisals? And then next thing you know, we got like 20 appraisal orders in 1 week. And in our mind, we thought we were like the biggest appraisal company in the world. We're like, wow, maybe we should just do appraisals, So we cut out the management and we started doing appraisals. Now, this was back in 1990. We started the business in 1998. So this was really like 1999, 2000. And we slowly started the business, just doing appraisals. Back then, now you have to understand, though, there was no, digital cameras. There was no emailing PDFs. So we hand delivered all of our appraisals that we were doing for our clients. We really developed a good rapport with our clients, learned their business, and slowly, there's a lot of turnover in the mortgage business. A lot of mortgage reps jump around to other companies. So as they would leave, they would call us up and bring us into another company. We almost didn't even have to sell in the beginning because we were just giving the service that they wanted. People were coming to us, which was great. But what I really learned, though, over time with the business was that I had to invest in people. Okay. So Lisa's on this call. I have 4 key employees that would have been with me for over 15 years, some over 20 years, that pretty much live and breathe RMS. So we have a saying at RMS: work hard, play hard. And that's kind of what we do. We work hard, but we have fun. Everybody gets along. We try to do things as a family. We go out, we take trips, we do, we do escape rooms, we do stuff like that to keep it light. Yeah. But we also do a lot of work. I mean, last year we did over 8,000 appraisals. So doing a lot of appraisals. And in 2005, we ventured into the title industry. So it was just a natural progression. It was a similar client base. So that's when we opened up the title division. They're actually 2 separate companies, but we market them as one. So, it's RMS Title and Appraisal. Technically, they're 2 separate companies. So, and as far as
never looked back since.
I'm sorry?
Never looked back since then?
No, never looked back. It's been a pretty wild ride. I mean, I've been through a lot of ups and downs in these markets, from I rode the wave up through 2005, 2006, and then watched it all come crumbling down in 08 and 09 and through that time, and then rode it back up recently. And, it's been fun. It's definitely been fun.
Some things really jump out to me, when you are from a business family, whether or not you like the business that your father is doing, because my father is a contractor. He makes buildings and he made roads and he made factories and all that stuff. I obviously knew that I wouldn't do that, but I had to be related to real estate. Like it was just a natural progression of doing things, having your own business, having your own setup, and doing something that feels like home to you. And I completely understand. And it's so important to have seen that cycle, to understand that cycle, to start from scratch, go up, be at a peak, see the downfall, and then see everything rise again. So it gives you a lot of perspective. And I think that you're going to bring a lot to our audiences today, because we are not talking to realtors, we are talking to regular people who are thinking of buying and selling their homes.
Correct.
It's personal. And if anybody tells me anything otherwise, I'm not ready to believe it, that buying and selling a home is not personal. So it's very important for them. Some people are thinking of moving up, downsizing. It's just such a volatile phase right now. You have all these articles coming up, and you have buyer's remorse articles, and you have these lines where 100 groups are standing in line, and there are 150 offers on properties, and it's just all confusing. So we'll try to clear the air a little bit today. And I'm going to start with the simplest question. In simple layman term, if you had to explain to a consumer what is an appraisal, how would you say it?
An appraisal is an opinion of market value. That's all it is. It's by a licensed or state certified appraiser, but it's just an opinion of market value. It's the simplest definition I could give anyone, and it's the truth.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? When you say that it is an opinion, so is it an opinion that's right? Is it an opinion that's valid for 6 months or a year or 2 years from now? Like
it's a snapshot in time. So the date that we do the appraisal, the actual date of the inspection, is the date we're valuing that appraisal for. That's it. One day. That's what the appraiser is saying that house is worth that day. Now it's up to the lender how long they would want to certify that for. Typically it's my experience that they'll keep for about 3 months before they ask for what's called a recertification of value. So if we do the appraisal today and the loan doesn't close, let's say for 3 or 4 months, you may have where they come on and do a recertification of value.
Isn't appraisal necessary for all real estate transactions?
Not a cash deal. No. If there's a mortgage involved, it's usually required. There are instances on like a refinance if the person's credit is really, really good, and if the LTV, with the loan to value ratio, is low, they could get what's called an appraisal waiver. But on all purchases that are non-cash, there's usually an appraisal.
Okay, that's interesting that you said that, unless they get an appraisal waiver. Why would somebody get an appraisal waiver and not have to appraise their house? Because the idea is that if I appraise my house, my tax assessor is going to know and my taxes are going to go up. Leaning into my next question, is an appraised value the same as assessed value, the same as market value?
No. So if we do an appraisal for a mortgage, it will have no effect at all on your taxes. Zero, zilch. They're not one and the same. I'm not a certified tax assessor. I've never done an appraisal for a tax assessment. Although companies like myself could do that, there's different rules. They don't follow the same rules that we do on a mortgage appraisal or typical appraisal. Each state has different jurisdictions, have different ways they value homes from an assessment side. All the tax assessment appraisal is for is to determine your taxes. That is it. It is not done. They don't reassess houses every year, right? They do them periodically. Whereas when we do an appraisal, like I said, it's a snapshot in time. So they may assess your house, in 2022, and they may not assess it again until 2027. That doesn't mean that your taxes won't increase. What they'll do within the town is they'll have a ratio in the town, and they'll just adjust the ratio if values are going up so they can raise the taxes. But it's very, very rare for the assessed value and the current market value of your home to be the same. It's very rare that we would see that. So like if people say, oh, well, my house is assessed for X and you appraise it Y, it's really irrelevant. I'm sorry, you asked, there was a 3-part question. You said appraised value, assessed value, and
market value.
Okay, so the best way I can put this is, so you have market value, which is the most probable price a house will sell, assuming everything is in a fair market. So it has the proper exposure time. There isn't, the seller or the buyer are not under any duress to sell or buy. There is, it's an arm's length transaction, meaning it's not between relatives, that sort of stuff. So it's the most probable price. The appraised value is the appraiser's opinion of that most probable price.
Exactly.
The sale price is really what's called market price. Okay. So it's not really the same as appraised value or market value. It's what that buyer and seller deemed that market would be. Now, if in today's market, where we see prices going up and up and up, we'll see many instances where the sales price will be higher than some of the appraised values, right? I'm sure you run into that. That doesn't mean that the house isn't worth it. That means the appraiser could prove the house is worth it. Now, sure, there's times where the house could sell higher than it should, but a lot of times what happens is we're using data that's old, right? So when we do an appraisal, I don't know, if many people on the call are familiar with how we break down an appraisal. We have to use what's called comparable sales. So we try to find the most comparable homes in the market, compare them to the subject, make adjustments higher, up or down, depending on the different characteristics of the home. Hopefully you have homes that are sort of similar and you don't have to make that many adjustments. The biggest issue we face now, though, is in an increasing market, is to make that adjustment for time, right? So if I'm using a comp that closed 6 months ago and I know the market's increasing, I need to adjust the difference in time to bring that comp from 6 months ago into the current market value.
That's so important.
Yeah, very important. And
Yes.
I'll be honest, there are a lot of appraisers out there that are probably don't do that. And that's why you're going to get more houses. I hate to use the word underappraised, but that don't appraise at the sale price.
Right.
With that said, if the house, the market price is higher than what the appraiser deems the market value to be, if the house still sells because let's say the buyer comes up with more money, now that property now goes into the pool of comparable sales, creating a new market value. So
True.
in essence, they all kind of work interchangeably. If you can, not the assessed value, but the appraised value, market value, and market price. So whenever you have that new sale create a new price, it helps raise the market value. I don't know if that's confusing, but there really is kind of three components to it.
Right. So that's a very important thing that you said, that the market price is what the buyer is willing to pay for the property.
Exactly.
And it does not necessarily have, so it's basically impossible for anybody to say that this house should be valued at this. All prices are basically opinions of what the property should be valued
100%.
at.
It's 100% an opinion. In fact, if 5 appraisers appraise the same house, theoretically, they would come up with a different value almost every time. They would come up with it. If I took 5 of my appraisers and asked them to appraise my house, they'd come up with 5 different values. Now, they should be within a relative
range
variance of, say 5%, let's say, but they would not come in at the same number. It would be very, very, very rare. Now, I know what you do see now a lot is if, and I get this a lot from people, if you have a sale for say $500,000, the appraiser magically comes in at $500,000, right? You see that a lot. And I know a lot of realtors have agents have said that to me. Why do you guys always come in at the sale price? When we're doing an appraisal, we're using a range of comparables that are going to give you, excuse me, a range of sale prices, a range of values, adjusted values. So as long as that sale price falls inside the range of values, a lot of the appraisers are just going to assign that sale price value, because if they went under that value, they wouldn't get the loan, obviously. And as long as it's supported within that value, they just put it at the sale price because they don't want to stick their neck out for more money, right? If the house is selling for $500,000 and it's supported at $500,000, the appraiser's not going to call it $520 because there's really no reason to. So
there's no reason to. Exactly.
There's no reason to. Yeah. Now that's not technically the right way to do it. I'm just telling you that's what a lot of times they do.
Right. And sometimes, you get an appraisal that's higher than the price that you're paying to purchase the property. That does not mean that now the buyer has to pay more money to the seller just because it appraised more. And neither does it mean that, they can put the house on the market the next day and make whatever $20,000-$25,000 on that property.
No, because it's not just that appraiser's opinion for starters. That doesn't mean there's going to be a buyer that's going to come in and pay that. It does not mean that at all. And the only time it could really be used for renegotiation is if it underappraises, and then the buyer can say, well, it didn't appraise.
Right.
I want to renegotiate, but they're never going to renegotiate on a higher value.
Right. Absolutely.
In all honesty, the seller has no rights to even see the appraisal.
Right. Exactly. Unless there's an issue.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
So if I have a seller who says that, I'm going to get an appraisal from an appraiser, and that's the value that I should get for the house, a buyer should pay me a minimum of this much. Is that a good idea?
Wait, could you just rephrase that? I'm sorry, one more time.
So if a seller tells me that, I'm thinking of putting my house on the market, but we are going to get an appraiser in, let's get them to appraise the house, and that's the minimum that I want a buyer to pay for the house. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, we've done pre-listing appraisals, but not a lot. I don't really think they're necessary. I personally feel like, if you have a good agent that you trust in the market, like yourself,
Thank you.
You guys I would say that a realtor would have a better feel what a house should be listed for than an appraiser would. So an appraiser is going to tell you what that value is that day, right? And they're using closed sales. They're not really factoring in, okay, what's on the market now? Yes, we give actives, but I believe a realtor is going to have a little bit more vision as far as what's going to happen moving forward, because as an appraisal is a snapshot in time. And also, a lot of appraisers. I'm not going to speak for my company because I do feel like we have a good geographical competencies in the area we are because we have people all over the state. But you have a lot of appraisers that cover a large geographical area. They don't know the market as well as you. They just don't.
As a local realtor does. Yeah, that's true.
The local realtor has a better feel for the market as what to price the house at. 100%, I believe that,
Right.
and I always have. We really lean on our local realtors. That whenever we do appraisals, we lean on them a lot, especially in this market, because it's super important that we try to look at pending sales, right? If the property values are increasing, we want to look what's currently pending. So that's information that can really help us support that time adjustment. If we just tell the bank, oh, the market's appreciating by 10%, it's really good to show them another sale that's about to close that proves that adjustment.
Right. And as a realtor, when we are looking at properties and when we are trying to figure out what to list the house at, we're looking at solds, yes, but we are also looking at under contracts. We're looking at houses that are in attorney review. We're looking at how many days they've been on the market, how many offers they had, because if there was a house that had like 25 offers, we know that there are 24 buyers out there looking for a similar house, like at this particular point of time.
And that's information the appraiser's never going to have.
Because they don't really need that information to be considered for anything. There's no documentation to prove that there were 24 offers and this is how the offers looked like.
Right.
But I think that's a very relevant point to drive, that what's happening in the market is a bigger determines the list price much more than what it is going to appraise for eventually.
Yes.
So that leads me into the next question. And I think most people on this call would have this question, that all the homes today that have appraised lower to the purchase price, it's not worth the price the buyer paid. I know you touched on it before, but I want you to elaborate this a little bit more.
Sure.
And that these buyers have negative equity for the next few years.
Okay. Sure. First of all, nobody has a crystal ball, that could say exactly what the market's going to do over the next 2 to 3, 4 years. What I can tell you, though, there is a lot of things different today than there was when the real estate market crashed in 2007 and 2008. Back then, we had a lot of no income, no asset verification loans. You had credit agencies giving AAA ratings to bad loans. And most importantly, you had people buying houses they couldn't afford. They were upside down on their houses as soon as the property values went down. Now people have a lot of equity in their home. It's a different time. So I don't see the same situation that we were in. And the other big thing right now is the inventory is still so low, and property values work off supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
If there's not a lot of supply and there's a lot of demand, property values are going to go up. I don't know about you, but I don't foresee this big influx of houses, rushing into the market and, anytime soon. Sure, we may get a little bit of a bump in the spring and summer season, but I don't think there's much more demand than supply at the moment. So I don't see that being a huge issue. Now, as far as your appraised value, not saying your house isn't worth it because it didn't appraise, I did touch on this a little bit earlier. Using the older comparable sales, if it's not adjusted correctly for time, it's very possible that the house is worth it, even though the appraiser couldn't make it. I can't tell you how many times I've sat on the phone with my VP of operations. We're doing an appraisal of a purchase, and we're doing everything in our power to make it because we know it's worth it.
Yes.
But we can't prove it.
Right.
We just can't prove it. It happens.
So actually, I orchestrated it, so I'm glad I made it on and done for that.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
That's Jen. She has to mute herself.
It's
Can
Jennifer.
I please ask? I'm just going to mute.
Oh, there you go. You did it.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Perfect. Sorry.
So,
so sorry, guys. I didn't mean to yell Jennifer. She's got her little kids there with her.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, you know, of course, there are instances where a buyer is going to overpay for a home. I mean, it's going to happen. And you know, when we see it a lot is when it's I'll give an example. I know we touched this on the phone when we spoke last week. You know, like a mother-daughter. You know, if you have a
Right.
situation where there's a home it's a mother-daughter, and a person really wants that house because it fits exactly what they need. That house has a use for them that's more important to them than that they're willing to overpay for. And they're okay with that. And a lot of times what happens in those instances, they're just going to come up with more money and they know they're overpaying. It's okay. But sure, then, you know, we see instances now where this is bidding wars and people, you know, bidding wars become, you said it earlier, buying a house is personal. Well,
Right.
bidding wars become personal. People want that house. They bid it up, they bid it up, they bid it up. And there are instances where, you know, sure, they could be overpaying, but most of the time that we see it now, we find that when we have that house that we can't appraise, if the people come up with the cash and it closes, 3 months later, we're using that as a comp, making another deal, and it's no problem. The value's there, you know, and there's other, and now there's a bunch more sales because that created a new high. And that's the only way the market's ever going to go up, right? Somebody has to buy a house above what is typically on the market there. That's how market values rise. You know, there's always going to be a new high by a new sale.
True.
And a lot of times the appraisal won't be able to prove it.
Right.
Because of the older comps.
I think especially nowadays with multifamily homes, that's also an issue, you know, because you have old renters and then new buyers of that house. And sometimes it's not possible to value the house if it is, you know, one of those one-offs in a single family home market where, you know, you have these two multifamily homes and one of them goes on the market after 20 years. Right. It becomes difficult to justify the price that they are selling for. But then that does not mean that they're not going to get the rent in the future for that property, or that property is not worth the price. Another thing is that the absorption rate. So if for people who do not know what an absorption rate is that the number of buyers that are in the market right now and the number of houses for them in that particular price range that are available. If no other buyer entered the market, how much time would it take for all those houses on the market to sell? Typically, a 6-month inventory or an absorption rate of 6 months is a stable market. If it is under, then it's a seller's market. And if it is above 6 months, then it's a buyer's market. Simple equation. But right now, the absorption rate is so flop-sided that if no other buyer enters the market right now in America, even if 1 million houses came on the market, you know, they would be sold in under 6 months. So that's the kind of crazy inventory shortage that we have. So, you know, if somebody is considering about selling their house into the future, even like 6 months from now, you know, they should really consider this, because if you sell high, I mean, if yes, you're buying high, but you're also selling high. Exactly. And buyers today are going to give you the room to sell their house, sell your house to them, and then allow you time in your house so that you can go and look for a house for yourself. So you're not going to be homeless. You're not going to be without a house. You're going to get, you know, better terms to be able to look for a house for yourself, which is a convenience really for sellers right now. And so is it for buyers, you know, because if you're renting right now, you know, you have you have that time. You will know that you're going to move in 60 days, because, you know, this is how long my seller is going to take to close on the property that they are buying next. So yes, it's an adjustment, but you know, things are workable. It's not a lost cause for anybody who's thinking about buying or selling in this market right now. I just wanted to
bring
add
up
that.
a good point about how if you're buying now and you're you know, if you're not a first-time home buyer and you have a house to sell, you know, not only are you going to make the money on that sale, but you're going to now go into a low interest rate environment for your next home and lock in at a low rate now, you know, and rates are creeping up a bit, but again, they're still historically very low.
Historically very, very low.
It's still,
that's true.
You know, money is still pretty cheap.
Right.
To buy that next house.
True. You know, they always say that the best time to buy a house was yesterday. So who does the appraiser work for? The buyer, the seller, or the lender? It's a very important question, because I would be really concerned if my lender tells me, oh, my appraiser always appraises the house at a certain value.
Yeah. So on a purchase appraisal, the lender owns the appraisal. We work for the lender.
Right.
How appraisals work is who orders the appraisal. That's technically who it is. But in a lending environment, when it's a purchase of a home, the lender is ordering the appraisal. We work for the lender and the lender only. Legally, we're not even allowed to discuss the appraisal with the buyer or the seller as far as the value. You could talk about peripheral things not related to the value, but we can't tell them what it appraised for. The only we can't give them a copy. The only person that we can do that with is the lender. That's who we have to give the copy to. Now, if the lender tells us it's okay to speak to them about the value or to give them a copy of it, we can, but we're technically not even allowed to speak to them about it. So it's lender's property. It's basically the appraisal's done to make sure there's enough equity in the home to support the loan. I mean, that's the basis of the entire process. That's why we do it.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Can a lender tell you that, hey, Rich, the house has to appraise for so much?
Okay. So it's funny you asked that. Prior to the housing collapse in the late 2000s that we just mentioned a few times here, every single appraisal order that I got, and at the time it was coming through a fax machine, it came through with a mortgage amount, sale price, and then obviously they want you to hit the sale price, but if it was a refinance, it came through with a mortgage amount, and they tell you what they needed the value to be. Now, that didn't mean that we made that value, but they told us what they needed the value to be. That's the way it used to be. That doesn't happen anymore at all. It's illegal. It's not allowed. It was illegal back then, but nobody cared. Now it's enforced. See, what a lot of people don't know was in the late 2000s, before the crash, or mid 2000s, I should say, mortgage brokers were ordering appraisals. Now, I don't know if you know the difference between a mortgage broker and mortgage banker. So if you go to a mortgage broker, they then take that loan and they shop it around to get you the best price. They don't have any skin in the game. They're not lending any money. So in their mind, they don't care if you could afford the house. They don't care if you overpay for the house. I'm not saying all mortgage brokers are like this, but theoretically, this was where the problem came in, was that you did have some mortgage brokers out there that were pushing appraisers to come into higher values. Right. And even pushing people and telling them they could afford more house than they could afford. When the real estate market crashed, they changed the rules to where mortgage brokers could no longer order appraisals. We're not allowed to take appraisal orders directly from the broker. It has to come from the bank itself. So now some mortgage brokers became what's called correspondent lenders. But again, I'm not going to get into explaining that, but they have skin in the game now. So now there's a risk to them if they push us to make a value that isn't there, and now that the people foreclose on that, they have to answer for that. So they're not as likely to push you to do that. So yeah, I mean, back in the day we used to get a lot of pressure. No more though, no more. And most of the appraisers that, at least in my experience, most of the appraisers that gave into that pressure are not appraisers anymore. They're just out of the business. And most of the mortgage people that were the ones putting that pressure on people are not in the business anymore. They got weeded out, thankfully.
Wow. So there was some advantage to the market crash.
There was, believe it or not, there was a lot of advantages. In my industry, there were a lot of advantages. There's some things I don't like. As an example, we have no idea, and this isn't necessarily purchase appraisal, so I won't get into it too much, but on a refinance, we never know what the bank needs. And, if we come in at 495 and they really needed 500,000 for the loan, it's silly to me that they can't tell you that at that point in time, because nobody's that good. There's no appraiser on the planet that's that good. The house is worth 495,500. No one's that good. It's on appraisal, there's a range. So, if it's within that range and it's supported by the range, more than likely, if the appraiser called it 495, he could have called it 500. Without having to change an adjustment, without changing anything, it was probably supported at 500 if they called it 495. True. And that part of it I don't like, but other than that, there are a lot of the pressures out of the business now. I just
it's
feel
more
like
streamlined
better
for sure.
people in the business.
I'll ask you another question. And this will be my last, and then, we'll open the floor to anybody else who has any questions.
Sure.
So historically, Black and Latino neighborhoods, homes appraise at a lower price. Now, I want you to tell me, how true is this? Do you see it often? And how a seller can identify a low appraisal, and what can they do to avoid such situations?
Okay, so I haven't necessarily run into that. I mean, I don't really see many appraisals except for the ones that my company does, and we certainly don't do that. That's not a practice of ours. It's not. You're not supposed to consider race or religion in an appraisal at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for other appraisals if they have certain biases that if they do that, I don't know. I haven't run across that, but my advice would be if you feel as though your house under appraised and for whatever reason, whether it be a race issue or just anything, start with your realtor, right? If you're the seller of that property and you think that house under appraised for any of those reasons, you start with your realtor, your listing realtor, and ask them for the supporting document of the comparables that you used to price the home, right? And then what you want to do is do what's called a reconsideration of value. You do that through the lender, though. So you would go through the lender. If you're the seller, you'd have to go through the buyer, back and forth with the buyer's lender, to show them why you think the house under appraised. And certainly, if you believe there was any sort of a race issue involved, you would want to bring that up.
Absolutely.
I don't think I would start there, though. Just because it's going to get the appraiser very defensive, obviously, and if for some reason it wasn't that, he's more than likely going to dig his feet in the ground and not budge on his value. I have a theory in my office. I said earlier we did over 8,000 appraisals last year.
Right.
There's no way when we're doing that many appraisals we're never going to make a mistake. I mean, we're human beings. There are instances where we do an appraisal and, maybe we miss something. Maybe there's a comparable that, we use and we don't know that there was something wrong with the house, or, the seller had a motivation that we didn't know and he sold it below market. It happens. The realtor has that knowledge, being the local expert. Maybe they were in the house. Maybe they saw that the house didn't work, or they know that they know the owner. They know the owner sold it cheap, So I would definitely advise the person to start with their realtor.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Rich, for answering all of my questions and more. We'll open the floor for all the participants. If anybody in the audience has any questions for Rich, please feel free to unmute yourself. And if you're not comfortable, you can always put it in the chat and I will ask Rich your question. Looks like we covered pretty much everything. Pierrette, do you have a question?
Hi, can you hear me? All
yes.
Right. I am in the United States. I find a link. I'm not sure where you are. Are you in Canada?
We are in New Jersey.
Oh, you are in New Jersey. Interesting. Yes. And that's where I am.
Oh, awesome.
Good.
All right. So the question that I wanted to address is when you mentioned about selling high. What we sell high, that we're also buying high? What is the purpose then?
Yeah, so the point we were trying to make, though, is if you wait to sell when the property values come down to buy low, well, you're going to lose it on the sale end. The point is, if you're looking to move, it's not a reason to not move, because you'll make it on the sale, and of course you're going to buy high as well. It's very hard to time the market for starters. In anything, not just real estate, stocks, anything. It's very difficult to time the market. But if you are looking to move for whatever reason, the reasons are that you want to move. People have so many different motivations to want to move, and you have equity in your house now, and you're going to make money in your house now. There's no reason not to move just because you're going to buy high. Because if you wait for the market to adjust, it's going to be the same situation. You're going to lose it on your sale and gain it on the purchase. So it's kind of a wash either way.
Right. And if I can answer that question a little bit more for you, Pierrette, is that, money is really cheap right now. So yes, the whole amount for you may seem higher and may seem on the high end. If you're selling, obviously you're making more money on your house and you have more money to buy a bigger house. If you're looking to buy a big house, and if you're thinking about downsizing, very nice, you'll have some money left over. But regardless of that, what lower interest rates are going to give you is they're going to give you lower lower monthly payments. Maybe the house price goes down by, say, 5%, let's say. It goes down by 5%, but if it goes up, if the interest rate goes up even by 1%, that brings your purchase power down by 10%. So you are actually losing 5% of your buying power overall. You see what I'm saying? So today, with the interest rates, if you can afford a $500,000 house and the value falls down by 5%, which would be $25,000. But if the interest rate goes up by 1%, you could have afforded a $500,000 house, but now the house that is worth $475,000, you can only buy for $450,000. So your purchase power goes down significantly lower compared to the market value. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Thank you for clarifying this. And because I feel like I am in the position where I'm contemplating the point that you are discussing. Although I just retired,
Congratulations.
By retiring, thank you. By retiring, I want my home. I want to stay in my home. There's a lot of equity in my home. And I do not want to go below the status that I am right now. Even though I would like to reduce, or downsizing, that's what you call it.
Right.
Because basically the home is too big for me right now. But I just sold my second home, which I consider that I liquidated it in the state of Florida, not knowing that the market was going to boom the way it is booming now. So by selling, I made some profit, but I also pay a lot of taxes because it was in my primary residence. So thinking about this one, and I just don't know where to go, because where I would want to go, I'm looking at the cost of them. And I said to myself, based on the amount of work that I already put in my house, does it worth it to go embrace something that somebody probably just embellished that could seduce my eyes to say, oh, it looks good, this is good, when in fact, I don't know what is inside of the home in terms of plumbing, the bigger picture that we cannot see. But I know
you definitely have to get a home inspection when you buy a house.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
The home inspector is going to see a lot of the things that you're not going to see, for sure. They're going to test all that stuff.
And Pierrette, I would love to, have a private conversation with you, because, your situation is unique. You've retired, your house is big for you, but you want to maintain your situation the way that it is. It needs a little bit more discussion. I can put my number in the chat, and I would love to have a one-on-one with you whenever you are available.
Okay. And in New Jersey, you cannot find those beautiful home or townhome that you could find in Florida for a price that is affordable. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
I've been looking, and anytime I see those townhomes, they're not even selling them. They are all for rent. Okay.
That's what we were speaking earlier about the inventory.
Yes. You will see in. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was looking for your number. As you said that you're gonna.
It's in the chat.
It's in
the
chat. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Where am I? I don't
Thank
even
you.
see-
Thank you, Pierrette, for your question. If you
Oh,
have any
sorry.
questions, you can always refer to me and Rich.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering my questions, and I'm glad that I was able to tune in.
Yes. I hope you learned something today.
I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi,
you.
Faria. This is Razia Jabrani
Hi,
from
Razia.
East. Yeah. So thank you for such an informative, session today. So I have a question. We bought a house last year in June, and the price that the estimated price that I'm seeing on Redfin, it's raised by almost like 50,000 and 60,000. So is that the true price that I would consider for my home these days, or what is the formula to estimate the real price nowadays?
Rich, do you mind if I take that question?
No, go ahead.
So Razia, the way that Redfins and Zillows come up with their estimates of price is based on market value. They do not personally come into your house and look at your house and determine a value for your property or what it would sell. So they don't have a lot of information regarding the absorption rates, for example, or what the market trends are, what is the demand and supply in your market. That's one thing. So that's the external part of it. The second part of it is that what home improvements have you made in your house, because your house could be completely different from your neighbor's house in terms of improvements. So that is another consideration that you would want to have. What you want to do is you want to have somebody like me who's a realtor come into your house and give you a broker price opinion, that we say. We give a range. Unlike appraisers, we don't give a number. We do give a range, and we try to adjust and come up with a list price that would bring maximum eyeballs to your property and drive in as many buyers as possible, and hopefully have a situation where the buyers compete with each other for your home. So maybe, your house is valued at $550,000, but it could be a strategy that we listed at $525,000 so that we can drive more potential buyers to your property. So it is. I would not go by Zestimates and Redfin estimates to price your house, because you may be leaving a lot of money on the table. I just want to give you a small example. So a colleague of mine listed the same house on Zillow, one as a FSBO. FSBO is a for sale by owner, and one as an agent. And I'll give you the exact numbers. As a FSBO, Zillow estimated the house for $150,000 less than this estimate for when it was listed by an agent.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot of money. You don't want to leave so much money on the table, No. And the second thing is that the for sale by owner had about 670 views and about 30 saves. The same house listed by the agent had 1,180 views and 75 saves.
Oh.
Even though it was $150,000 more than what this estimate was, or what the FSBO price was. So yes, I would not. You're leaving money on the table. If the idea is to try and save the 2.5% that you would pay an agent, you're leaving a lot more on the table. Just for that.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answers your questions. If Rich wants to add something.
All I could tell you is that when Zillow came out, it's like the kryptonite for appraisers. I can't tell you how often we get that. Well, Zillow said my house is worth this, and we have to explain to people that, exactly what you just did, that they're not coming up with the value the same way that we are, that there's algorithms involved and believe it or not, they can't even decipher. Sometimes they're comparing your house to commercial properties. They're basically taking sales, and they don't even really have enough data on the sales. I've seen where they're using commercial properties to come up with the value. So I would definitely, look, Zillow has its good points for sure. I mean, it's not a bad little tool to look, but if you're looking to put your house on the market, I strongly suggest, speaking to a realtor to price the house and list it for you, and make sure you're getting that maximum dollar. I think the 2.5% is well worth it. Negotiating, it's just definitely money well spent.
Okay, thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything on the chat?
Actually, I don't have anything in chat. So I think we've pretty much answered all the questions. Thank you, Rich, so much for your time. And I hope, we can maybe do this sometime again.
Absolutely, whenever you need me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. You can always reach Rich, if you don't mind, can you put your number in the chat?
Sure.
Or email address, whatever is more comfortable for you. If you have any real estate questions, please feel free to call me, text me. You can use your messenger, WhatsApp, whatever form of communication that you are most comfortable with. I would be more than happy to answer all your questions. Rich would be happy to answer all your appraisal related questions.